Elder Kala of the Serenian Commonwealth floated in her crystalline meditation chamber, her translucent form trembling with grief as she watched through the transparent walls another peaceful colony burning in the distance. The elegant floating platforms of Serenity 7, which had housed scholars and philosophers for over 2 centuries, were now nothing but twisted metal and desperate screams echoing across the planet's serene atmosphere. Through her enhanced optical sensors, Kala could see the Dominion slaver ships moving through the colony with the mechanical efficiency of farmers harvesting crops. The vessels were brutal, angular things that looked like flying prisons, dark hulls covered with containment systems and neural suppression equipment designed specifically for capturing and transporting sentient beings against their will. The sight never became easier to witness. Serenian families who had spent their lives in peaceful contemplation and scholarly research were being herded into cargo holds like livestock, their gentle voices crying out for help that would never come. The Dominion raiders moved with practiced cruelty, using neural disruptors to stun their victims into helpless compliance before loading them into transport containers designed to hold as many beings as possible in the smallest space. Status report from the outer meditation colonies. Kala requested from her aide, Philosopher Zen, though she already knew the devastating truth from the screams she could hear through her telepathic connections to her people. The slavers hit the Crystal Gardens complex 4 hours ago, Zen reported, his ethereal voice carrying the weight of unbearable sorrow. 12,000 scholars, including the younglings in the wisdom circles. They separated the families deliberately, loading children and adults into different ships. Another horror. The Dominion slavers didn't just capture people. They systematically destroyed family bonds and cultural connections to make their victims more compliant. Parents watched helplessly as their children were dragged away to different ships, knowing they might never see each other again. The psychological torture was as deliberate as the physical capture. The Dominion itself was a nightmare organization that treated sentient life as a commodity to be harvested and sold. Their ships moved through peaceful regions like predators, targeting civilizations that couldn't defend themselves and turning entire populations into merchandise for galactic flesh markets where beings were bought and sold like furniture. How many of our people have been taken in the past month? Kala asked, though tracking their losses had become a ritual of despair that offered no hope for rescue. Over 3 million confirmed captured, Zen replied, consulting his data crystal with hands that shook with grief. The slavers are systematically working through our outer colonies while avoiding our few defensive installations. They want maximum capture with minimum resistance. The Serenians were completely unprepared for such organized evil. Their civilization had evolved from peaceful philosophers who spent their lives contemplating the beauty of existence and developing advanced mental techniques for achieving harmony with the universe. They had no military beyond basic patrol ships, no weapons beyond ceremonial artifacts, no experience with the kind of systematic cruelty that treated people as property. Their entire understanding of conflict was based on philosophical disagreements resolved through meditation and discussion. The concept of beings who captured families for profit was so alien to their worldview that they struggled to develop effective responses to something their minds could barely comprehend. Sir, long-range sensors detect another Dominion fleet approaching the inner sanctuary worlds, announced Navigator Drift from her sensor station. Fleet composition suggests they're preparing for major population harvesting operations rather than selective raids. Through the meditation chamber's observation windows, Kala could see the approaching slaver fleet, massive cargo ships escorted by smaller raider craft, all designed with one purpose: converting free beings into enslaved property. The sight filled her with the kind of despair that her people's meditation techniques had never been designed to address. Send distress calls to any nearby civilizations, Kala instructed weakly, knowing that their options for help were limited but feeling obligated to try every possible avenue for saving her people. Perhaps someone can spare defensive equipment or evacuation ships to help our people escape before the next raids begin. The Serenian databases contained information about dozens of neighboring civilizations, most of them peaceful species like themselves who would offer sympathy but little practical assistance against organized slavers. Their understanding of military intervention was based on galactic conventions that assumed civilized behavior from all participants, limited engagements with clear rules of engagement and surrender terms that allowed defeated enemies to survive with dignity. Ambassador Finn, whose gossamer wings had been damaged during the last evacuation, activated the quantum communication array that could reach neighboring star systems. His transmission was humble, desperate, and heartbreakingly modest in its requests. To any civilized species receiving this message, the Serenian Commonwealth requests minimal assistance against systematic slaver raids targeting our peaceful colonies. We are scholars and philosophers with no military capability to defend against organized capture operations. We offer our advanced meditation techniques, philosophical archives, and 3 millennia of wisdom traditions in exchange for any humanitarian aid you can provide. The message included technical specifications about Serenian physiology and environmental needs, along with detailed descriptions of Dominion slaver methods that painted a clear picture of organized evil targeting defenseless populations for profit. The transmission went out through quantum relay networks, reaching species throughout their local galactic region. The Serenians expected limited assistance from civilizations that might spare a few patrol ships or provide evacuation support for the most vulnerable populations. Their databases showed humans as a recently contacted Deathworld species with limited space presence. Beings who had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and were still exploring their local region of space. The entry was brief and unremarkable. Inhabitants of a dangerous world who had survived hostile environments through unknown methods. These humans, column used to Ambassador Finn as they reviewed potential sources of aid, they're from a dangerous world. Perhaps they understand survival under difficult conditions. The Serenians expected perhaps a few patrol ships offering evacuation assistance, maybe some technical advice about defensive strategies, or possibly shelter for refugees in human space. After all, beings who had to struggle for survival on hostile worlds probably had limited resources to spare for large-scale humanitarian operations. They had no idea they just sent a detailed description of organized slavery to a species whose entire history had taught them that enslaving sentient beings was the ultimate crime against sapient life, a transgression so heinous that it required immediate death sentences for every participant without possibility of mercy, negotiation, or surrender. The message raced through space toward Sol 3, carrying the desperate plea of a peaceful civilization to beings who would interpret organized slavery as grounds for complete extermination of everyone involved in the slave trade. Admiral Karen Johnson sat in the Strategic Operations Center at Terra Command, reviewing the morning intelligence reports when the priority alert system activated with the distinctive tone reserved for crimes against humanity. The Serenian distress call appeared on her main display, flagged by automated analysis systems that had immediately recognized the described activities as organized slavery operations. "Commander Thompson," she called to her intelligence officer, "pull up the complete assessment on this intercepted transmission from Serenian space." The holographic displays surrounding her command station came alive, showing detailed analysis of the alien species crisis report. The military's computers had processed the Serenian data and cross-referenced it against humanity's historical databases of slavery, human trafficking, and organized exploitation of sentient beings. "Ma'am, the automated threat assessment classifies this as large-scale slavery operations targeting civilian populations," Commander Thompson reported, his voice carrying the cold anger that every human military officer felt when confronting this particular crime. "The perpetrators are systematically capturing families, separating children from parents, and selling sentient beings in organized flesh markets." Johnson reviewed the classification with the grim focus of someone whose species had fought a civil war over the issue of slavery and had never forgotten the lessons learned from that blood-soaked chapter of their history. The Dominion's methods, treating people as property, deliberately destroying family bonds, operating organized markets for sentient beings, violated every principle that human civilization held sacred. "This isn't warfare," Johnson said, her voice carrying the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. "This is organized crime against sapient life on an industrial scale. These aren't military opponents, they're criminals operating a business model based on human trafficking." The distinction was fundamental to how humanity approached the slavery issue. While other forms of conflict might involve complex political considerations and rules of engagement designed to minimize casualties, slavery was different. It was the one crime that humanity had collectively decided deserved no mercy, no negotiation, no consideration for the perpetrator's motivations or circumstances. General Michael Wilson, Johnson called to her operations commander, who was already reviewing deployment options at his tactical planning station. "We have organized slavers targeting civilian populations for profit. I want the 5th Battle Group ready for immediate extermination operations within 8 hours. Wilson activated his communication links to military bases across the solar system, sending authorization codes that would mobilize humanity's most specialized anti-slavery forces. "All fleet commanders, this is General Wilson. Priority deployment authorized for slavery eradication operations. We're dealing with organized criminals who treat sentient beings as property. Standard protocols apply, no quarter, no survivors, no exceptions." The 5th Battle Group represented humanity's most ruthless military capability, 600 warships designed not for conventional warfare, but for complete elimination of specific threats. These vessels carried weapons and personnel specifically trained for operations where the objective wasn't victory or strategic advantage, but total eradication of enemy forces. President Daniel Miller received the emergency briefing at the White House within 3 hours of the initial intelligence assessment, surrounded by his cabinet who treated slavery as the one issue that automatically triggered maximum military response regardless of political considerations or international implications. What's the scope of the operation? Miller asked Secretary of Defense Patricia Hayes during the secure briefing. Organized slavery ring operating across multiple star systems, Hayes replied, displaying intelligence analysis that showed the scale of the Dominion's operations. They're running industrial-scale capture operations, family separation protocols, and organized markets for sentient beings. Classic slavery operations scaled up to galactic level. Miller's authorization was immediate and absolute. Operation Broken Chains is approved. Total elimination of all slaver forces with no quarter given and no survivors permitted. I want every person, ship, base and financial system supporting this operation completely destroyed. The authorization included deployment of humanity's most extreme military capabilities, weapons designed to leave no survivors, tracking systems that could hunt criminal organizations across multiple star systems, and intelligence operations that would map every aspect of the slavery network before systematically eliminating all participants. Standard anti-slavery protocols. Johnson announced during the fleet commander's briefing that would coordinate humanity's most uncompromising military response. These aren't military opponents engaged in legitimate warfare. They're criminals who forfeited their right to exist by treating sentient beings as property. No warnings will be issued, no negotiations will be attempted, no mercy will be shown. Captain William Brooks prepared his specialized hunter-killer squadrons at the Asteroid Belt Military Yards, overseeing the deployment of ships and personnel specifically trained for elimination operations rather than conventional combat. His vessels carried equipment designed not to defeat enemies, but to ensure that no participant in slavery operations survived to continue their activities. Load the complete eradication package. Brooks ordered his squadron leaders. Anti-slavery tracking systems, complete elimination protocols, and enough firepower to destroy every vessel, facility, and person involved in this operation. We're not capturing prisoners or accepting surrenders. The human approach to slavery was shaped by their species' historical experience with the practice and their collective decision that enslaving sentient beings was the ultimate crime against sapient life. Unlike conventional warfare, which involved rules of engagement and consideration for enemy combatants, slavery was treated as a capital crime requiring immediate execution of all participants. Major Lisa Davis coordinated the ground forces deployment, preparing teams equipped with weapons and training designed for operations where the mission objective was complete elimination rather than military victory. Standard slavery eradication protocols, she announced to her battalion commanders. Every slaver dies, every facility burns, every asset gets destroyed. No exceptions, no survivors, no mercy. To humans, slavery wasn't warfare requiring careful consideration of proportional response and diplomatic solutions. It was a crime against sapient life that demanded immediate execution through professional killers equipped with unlimited authorization to use lethal force against anyone involved in treating people as property. The fleet that prepared to depart for Serenian space carried the cold purpose of executioners heading to carry out death sentences that had been pronounced the moment humanity learned that organized slavery was operating in their region of space. They weren't going to war. They were going to eliminate criminals. Elder Kala floated in her emergency command center, monitoring long-range sensors for any sign of the modest assistance she hoped the mysterious human response might provide. Around her, Serenian officials worked desperately to coordinate evacuations from colonies still threatened by Dominion slaver raids, expecting whatever help arrived to follow standard galactic warfare conventions. Any sign of the human fleet? Keela asked her sensor operator, Navigator Drift, though she held little hope that beings from a distant death world could provide meaningful help against organized slavers who had terrorized their region for decades. "Ma'am, we're detecting massive hyperspace distortions approaching the system," Drift announced, her translucent form flickering with confusion patterns. "The readings are unprecedented. I'm counting hundreds of individual signatures." Through the command center's crystalline walls, Keela could see the first signs of arrival, brilliant flashes of light as vessels dropped out of hyperspace in formations that spoke of tremendous military experience. But what emerged from the swirling energy portals was unlike anything the Serenians had expected or prepared for. Instead of a few patrol ships offering limited assistance according to galactic conventions, space around Serenian Prime filled with the most ruthless military deployment in galactic history. Admiral Johnson's flagship Liberator emerged from hyperspace like an instrument of judgment, its dark hull bristling with weapons designed not for conventional warfare, but for complete elimination of specific targets. Behind the flagship came wave after wave of human warships, 600 vessels that deployed with mechanical precision across the entire star system. But these weren't the measured, diplomatic forces that characterized most galactic military interventions. These were ships designed for extermination operations, carrying personnel and equipment specifically trained for missions where the objective was complete elimination rather than military victory. How many ships? Elder Keela whispered, staring at tactical displays that showed human forces establishing positions around every planet, moon, and space station in their system. 600 confirmed vessels, Drift replied, her voice barely steady. They're not establishing defensive positions or requesting coordination meetings. They're deploying for systematic elimination operations across the entire sector. Admiral Johnson's voice cut through Serenian communication channels with authority that made clear this wasn't a rescue mission conducted according to civilized warfare protocols. This was an extermination operation implemented by beings who treated slavery as a capital crime requiring immediate execution of all participants. Serenian Command, this is Admiral Karen Johnson of the Terra Liberation Fleet, came the transmission. We're here to eliminate the slavery threat operating in your territory. All Dominion slaver forces will be destroyed. No warnings will be issued, no surrenders will be accepted, no exceptions will be made. The message was accompanied by tactical data showing that human forces had already mapped every slaver position within 300 light-years, identifying ships, bases, markets, and personnel with precision that shouldn't have been possible. The humans weren't planning to fight the slavers, they were planning to execute them. Admiral Johnson, Elder Keela managed, still struggling to process the scale and nature of what she was witnessing. We appreciate your assistance, but surely galactic warfare conventions require. There are no conventions that apply to slavers, Johnson interrupted with finality that brooked no argument. Beings who treat sentient life as property have forfeited their right to exist. We're not here to conduct warfare, we're here to eliminate criminals. Captain William Turner coordinated hunter-killer operations from his command vessel Retribution, deploying squadrons that tracked every slaver ship, base, and market across multiple star systems with technology that made conventional military sensors look primitive. His forces didn't engage in battle. They executed slavers with industrial efficiency that treated the entire Dominion organization as a criminal enterprise requiring complete extermination. All hunter-killer teams commence elimination operations, Turner announced on tactical channels. Rules of engagement are simple. Every being involved in slavery dies immediately. No warnings, no negotiations, no prisoners. The human approach was systematic and terrifying in its efficiency. Slaver vessels that had terrorized peaceful species for decades suddenly found themselves hunted by forces that treated them not as military opponents, but as criminals deserving immediate death sentences. Human ships appeared without warning, eliminated their targets with overwhelming firepower, then moved on to the next slaver position. Major Lisa Davis led ground operations from the assault ship Freedom, coordinating teams that freed enslaved populations while systematically killing every slaver found, regardless of rank, species, or willingness to surrender. Her forces carried specialized equipment designed not for conventional combat, but for operations where the mission was liberation of captives and execution of captors. Standard anti-slavery procedure, Davis reported during the daily operational briefing. We locate the slave compounds, eliminate all guards and overseers, free the captives, then systematically hunt down every person involved in the operation. No trials, no prisoners, no exceptions. The liberation operations proceeded with mechanical precision that turned rescue missions into execution details. Human forces would surround slaver facilities, eliminate every guard simultaneously, then systematically process the entire operation, freeing slaves, documenting crimes, and executing every participant in the slavery network. Commander Robert Hayes coordinated intelligence operations that mapped the entire Dominion organization with forensic precision, identifying every person, ship, base, and financial system involved in the slave trade. His teams didn't gather intelligence for military advantage. They created target lists for complete elimination operations. Comprehensive organizational mapping complete, Hayes announced. We've identified every slaver, every ship, every base, every market and every financial backer in the Dominion network. Systematic elimination proceeding on schedule. The efficiency was absolute and terrifying to witness. The Serenians, accustomed to galactic warfare conventions that included rules of engagement, prisoner exchanges and negotiated settlements, watched in stunned silence as human forces treated the slavery crisis like pest control requiring complete extermination of the infestation. Captain Jennifer Ross led the orbital bombardment operations that eliminated slaver facilities with weapons designed to leave no survivors and no possibility of reconstruction. Target elimination complete, she would report after each strike. Facility vaporized, all personnel killed, no possibility of operational continuation. The systematic extermination continued across multiple star systems as human forces demonstrated that their zero-tolerance policy towards slavery meant exactly what it said: complete elimination of every person, ship, base, and system involved in treating sentient beings as property. Within days, the Dominion slaver organization that had operated with impunity for centuries was being systematically erased from existence by beings who approached slavery as the ultimate crime requiring immediate death sentences for all participants. The galaxy was learning what human justice looked like when applied to the one crime humanity considered unforgivable. The humans implemented what they called comprehensive slavery elimination protocols, with the systematic precision of industrial engineers dismantling a factory. Captain Jennifer Roberts stood in the orbital command center of the battleship Justice, coordinating operations that treated every aspect of the Dominion slave trade as a criminal organization requiring complete elimination through professional military action. All bombardment platforms commence infrastructure elimination, Roberts announced through the Tactical Communication Network. Target priority is complete destruction of operational capability. We're not just stopping their current activities, we're ensuring they can never resume operations. The human approach to eliminating slavery was methodical and overwhelming in its thoroughness. Roberts led orbital bombardment operations that didn't just destroy slaver facilities. They vaporized them completely using directed energy weapons that left nothing but molecular dust where slave markets and processing centers once stood. Bombardment of slaver complex Delta 7 complete, reported Lieutenant Commander Patricia Foster from her weapons control station. Facility completely eliminated. No structural remains detected. Site is unsuitable for reconstruction. The systematic destruction continued across multiple worlds as human forces applied military-grade solutions to what they classified as organized crime requiring permanent elimination. Each slaver facility was subjected to orbital bombardment that ensured no possibility of rebuilding, no chance of resuming operations, no opportunity for the slave trade to re-establish itself. Commander Robert Hayes led the intelligence operations that mapped the entire Dominion network with forensic precision, identifying every person, ship, base, and financial system involved in the slave trade. His teams worked like criminal investigators building cases, except their objective wasn't prosecution. It was complete elimination of the criminal organization. Comprehensive network analysis complete, Hayes announced during the daily operational briefing. We've mapped every slaver operation across 47 star systems. Every ship, every base, every market, every transport route, every financial backer. The entire organization is cataloged and targeted for elimination. The Dominion slavers, accustomed to civilized species offering negotiated surrenders and prisoner exchanges, faced human forces that treated slavery as an unforgivable crime requiring complete organizational destruction. There would be no trials, no negotiations, no opportunities for rehabilitation or reform. Major William Turner coordinated the systematic elimination of slaver fleets using hunter-killer tactics that turned space combat into industrial processing. His squadrons didn't engage in traditional battles with maneuvering and tactical exchanges. They simply appeared without warning and eliminated their targets with overwhelming firepower. Slaver Fleet Gamma eliminated, Turner reported with the same tone he might use to announce completion of routine maintenance. All vessels destroyed, no survivors detected. Moving to next target coordinates. The human vessels operated with technological superiority that made conventional space combat obsolete. Slaver ships that had terrorized peaceful civilizations for decades found themselves outmatched by weapons systems they couldn't understand, sensor technology they couldn't detect, and tactics they'd never encountered. Captain Lisa Wilson led the financial warfare operations that systematically destroyed every economic system supporting the slave trade. We're not just eliminating the operational capability, she explained to her staff. We're destroying their entire economic infrastructure. Every bank account, every investment, every financial asset that ever touched slave money gets eliminated. The economic warfare was as thorough as the military operations. Human intelligence agencies tracked slave trade profits through complex financial networks, then systematically eliminated every institution, account, and individual that had profited from treating sentient beings as property. The message was clear: participating in slavery meant forfeiting not just life, but every economic benefit derived from the criminal activity. Dr. Michael Brooks coordinated the documentation operations that recorded every aspect of the slave trade for historical preservation. "We're creating a complete record of their operations," he announced to his research teams. "Future generations will understand exactly what we eliminated and why complete destruction was the only acceptable response." The documentation teams worked alongside the elimination forces, preserving evidence of slavery operations while ensuring that every participant in the trade was held accountable for their crimes. The records would serve as both historical documentation and justification for the complete destruction of the Dominion organization. Commander Diana Davis led the liberation operations that freed enslaved populations while systematically eliminating their captors. Her teams carried specialized equipment designed for rapid processing of slave compounds, devices that could break any restraint system, medical equipment that could treat any form of abuse, and transportation that could evacuate millions of freed beings to safe locations. "Standard liberation protocol complete at Processing Center 12, Davis reported. "All captives freed and evacuated to medical facilities. All slaver personnel eliminated. Facility destroyed to prevent future use." The liberation operations proceeded with mechanical efficiency that prioritized the safety and well-being of freed slaves while ensuring that no slaver escaped justice. Human forces would surround facilities, eliminate guards simultaneously, then systematically process the entire operation with medical precision. Within 4 months, the systematic elimination was complete. The Dominion slaver organization that had operated across dozens of sectors for centuries was completely extinct, with every participant eliminated and every asset destroyed. The slave markets that had bought and sold sentient beings for profit were reduced to molecular dust. The transport networks that had moved captives across the galaxy were eliminated. The financial systems that had profited from human trafficking were destroyed. Complete organizational destruction achieved, Hayes reported during the final briefing. The Dominion slave trade is extinct. Every participant has been eliminated, every facility destroyed, every asset eliminated. No operational capability remains. The transformation was absolute and final. The galaxy's most extensive slavery operation had been reduced to historical records and empty space through methods that most civilizations couldn't imagine implementing. Human forces had treated the elimination of slavery not as warfare requiring measured responses, but as pest control requiring complete extermination of the infestation. The efficiency was both remarkable and terrifying to witness. A species that approached the crime of slavery with industrial-scale solutions designed to ensure that such organizations could never threaten sentient beings again. 5 months after the complete elimination of the Dominion slaver organization, Elder Kala toured the transformed Serenian Commonwealth aboard the human patrol vessel Vigilance, marveling at the comprehensive monitoring network that had been established throughout their territory. The space lanes that had once been hunting grounds for slave raiders were now protected by detection systems that could identify forced labor operations from multiple star systems away. "The sensor coverage is unprecedented," Kala observed to Commander Lisa Thompson, her human escort for the inspection tour. Through the vessel's observation ports, she could see the orbital monitoring stations that ringed every inhabited world, their advanced sensors constantly scanning for the electromagnetic signatures that indicated coercion, captivity, or involuntary servitude. Thompson consulted her data tablet showing the real-time security status of the entire sector. "Standard anti-slavery protection protocols. We've established monitoring networks that can detect forced labor, involuntary confinement and coercion-based economic activity across a radius of 300 light-years. Any indication of slavery triggers immediate investigation and elimination response." The transformation was comprehensive in ways that still left Serenian philosophers speechless. Human engineers had rebuilt their civilization's security infrastructure with technology that could detect slavery at the individual level. Sensors that could identify stress patterns indicating coercion, communication networks that could hear calls for help across interstellar distances, and response systems that could deploy liberation forces within hours of detecting slave operations. What amazed Elder Kala most was how the humans had treated the anti-slavery operation not just as military necessity, but as the foundation for a new moral order throughout their region of space. Every trade agreement now included anti-slavery verification clauses. Every transportation system incorporated monitoring for involuntary passengers. Every economic transaction was screened for indicators of forced labor. The automated detection systems you've implemented, Thompson explained as they reviewed the monitoring data, can identify slavery operations before they become established. Individual coercion, family separation, involuntary confinement. Our systems detect and respond to all forms of enslavement immediately. Admiral Karen Johnson met them at the new Anti-Slavery Command Center that had been established as the central coordination point for liberation operations throughout the galactic sector. The facility was a monument to human moral determination, a space station that could coordinate anti-slavery operations across dozens of star systems while serving as a training center for other species learning to combat forced labor. Admiral Johnson, Elder Kala said during their final meeting in the Admiral's office overlooking the bustling Anti-Slavery Operations Center, I need to address something that has troubled our entire civilization. Your response to our crisis was far more comprehensive than we expected from any military intervention. Johnson's expression was hard as steel, carrying the weight of someone whose species had fought wars over the slavery issue and had never forgotten the lessons learned. Elder Kala, humanity's history with slavery created absolute intolerance for the practice. Any being who participates in enslaving others forfeits their right to exist. That principle is not negotiable under any circumstances. She activated a holographic display showing human history, centuries of slavery followed by civil war, abolition, and the development of absolute moral prohibitions against treating sentient beings as property. Every human child learns that slavery is the ultimate crime against sapient life. We didn't just outlaw it, we made its complete eradication our sacred duty. The casual way Johnson discussed the complete elimination of slavery operations as moral obligation rather than military strategy continued to amaze galactic observers. What other species considered harsh justice, humans treated as the minimum acceptable response to crimes against sentient life. The transformation was indeed complete. The Serenian Commonwealth had gone from facing systematic enslavement to inhabiting the most secure anti-slavery zone in the galaxy, protected by monitoring systems that made forced labor impossible within their territory. Their trade networks now carried human anti-slavery technology to neighboring civilizations, while their communication systems included direct links to human liberation forces. But the implications extended far beyond Serenian space. Word of humanity's absolute stance on slavery had spread throughout civilized space, creating a new understanding of what Deathworld morality actually meant when applied to galactic politics. Captain William Brooks, commanding the permanent human anti-slavery force in the sector, reviewed the requests that arrived daily at his headquarters. The Crystal Federation reports suspicious labor practices in their mining colonies. The Agricultural Alliance has detected coercion in their harvest operations. The Peaceful Traders Guild is requesting verification that their supply chains are free of forced labor. Each request was processed through human anti-slavery networks and handled by specialists who approached forced labor as a crime requiring immediate investigation and potential elimination response. The galaxy was learning that human protection extended to any form of involuntary servitude, regardless of cultural justifications or economic motivations. Major Jennifer Davis, coordinating the expanding Human Liberation Network, filed reports that showed the scope of what had become a new galactic institution. Current monitoring coverage. Human anti-slavery systems are scanning economic activity across 62 different species. Detection capability now extends to subtle forms of coercion that local authorities couldn't identify. The economic implications were staggering. Human companies specializing in labor verification found themselves with more business than they could handle, while civilizations that implemented human anti-slavery standards gained preferred trading status with the most advanced military force in their region of space. Other species facing slavery threats began specifically requesting human-scale anti-slavery intervention, learning that Deathworld morality included certain crimes that required immediate death sentences for all participants without possibility of mercy, negotiation, or cultural relativism. Dr. Patricia Hayes, leading the anti-slavery education programs for alien civilizations, observed the cultural shift taking place as human moral standards spread throughout the sector. We're not just eliminating individual slavery operations anymore. We're changing how entire civilizations think about forced labor. Species are starting to implement human-level prohibition against any form of involuntary servitude. The ripple effects continued expanding as human anti-slavery protocols became the new galactic standard. Civilizations that had tolerated various forms of forced labor began implementing human-designed detection systems. Trade networks across the galaxy adopted human verification procedures for ensuring labor practices met human moral standards. Commander Robert Foster, overseeing the cultural integration aspects of anti-slavery work, noted the broader transformation. They're learning to think about individual liberty the way humans do, as an absolute right that cannot be compromised for any reason. It's fundamentally changing their understanding of what constitutes acceptable treatment of sentient beings. Word spread throughout civilized space with remarkable consistency. Human ruthlessness regarding slavery meant complete extermination of all participants without possibility of mercy, surrender, or redemption. What other species viewed as harsh justice, humans considered the minimum acceptable response to the ultimate crime against sapient life. The galaxy realized that humans didn't just oppose slavery, they'd made its complete eradication their sacred duty, enforceable through unlimited violence against anyone who treated sentient beings as property, regardless of species, culture, or claimed justification. Elder Kala filed her final report to the Serenian Council with profound gratitude and lingering amazement. We called for modest assistance against slavers and received complete transformation of our moral universe. Humanity didn't just save us from slavery, they made slavery impossible throughout our region of space and taught us that some principles are worth unlimited violence to defend.